Okay, let's begin with the dough. I'm going to start with 1 cup of flour. Bread flour makes a great dough, but here I'm using all-purpose. I've measured out 2 1/4 teaspoon instant yeast, 3/4 teaspoon salt, 1 1/2 teaspoon sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 1/4 teaspoon of granulated garlic, and you just mix all these together in the dry phase, and you can get really creative with the seasonings. Here I'm just keeping it nice and simple. You add 2 tablespoons of olive oil once it's all mixed together, and then you're going to add 3/4 cup of warm water, and really you're just going to mix this all together. And you're going to start out with just this 1 cup of flour and mix this in, and then you're going to slowly add more flour, about a cup, sometimes more, sometimes less. You're just going to judge it. You're going to see when the dough starts to pull away from the bowl and not really stick to the spoon so much. And you just add a little bit of time to get that right consistency. And see, here it's sticking to the spoon. I need to add a little bit more. And you want it to be, you don't want to be too flour. That's why you have to go slow, because you're going to add more flour into it when you start to work with it and knead it later on. See, it's pulling right away from everything. And also on that 2 1/4 teaspoon, that's the yeast. That is also the same as a packet of yeast. Here I'm using olive oil, and I am greasing up a bowl that it's going to sit in and rest. You want to put it in there and roll it around, grease the entire dough. And you're going to put saran wrap on that, and you're going to let that rise for about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes in a warm place, it's going to puff up, you're going to punch it down, and then you're going to knead it a little bit, just a little bit. And I go ahead and stick it in another bowl and put it in the refrigerator. I like to work with the refrigerated dough, for a couple hours, just so that it's just easier to work with and it's not as sticky. So just flour your surface and use your hands, a rolling pin, whatever you're comfortable with, spreading the dough out. Now the recipe that I made all this dough, it actually made 2. I should have said that. It makes 2, and then after it rises, I pull it apart and refrigerate 2 separate doughs. Now with the cast iron, you just use olive oil on the inside of the cast iron and coat it very well. You can use some cornstarch. This cast iron, I don't really need anything but the olive oil. It's been seasoned for a very long time. And just work it out edge to edge within the cast iron. I believe this is the 14-inch cast iron that I'm using here. Now we're going to let this dough rise another 30 minutes in the pan itself. Once it's room temperature. Once it's room temperature, give it about 30 minutes to rise. I put some olive oil on the top of it so that it doesn't dry out. And when it's cooking, it could bubble up on you, so I like to use a fork, and I put little holes in the dough so I don't get those big bubbles. Okay, we set that to rise for about 30 minutes.
Now let's make some sauce for your pizzas. You're going to want to start off with 28 ounces of whole plum tomatoes. You can either crush these up by hand, or if you're like me and prefer a smoother sauce, you can blend them with an immersion blender. Once these get to the consistency you're happy with, you can add them back into a bowl and get ready for the rest of the ingredients. I'm going to start off with a 1/4 cup of sugar. Next, you're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt, a healthy glug of olive oil, about a 1/4 cup. Next, you'll add 2 tablespoons of dried oregano, 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. Come behind that with 4 tablespoons of tomato paste. Now this part's optional, but if you like a spicier sauce, you can add some dried jalapenos, about a tablespoon, or some red pepper flakes if you like. Now you're ready to mix up your sauce. You can go ahead and stir it up, but if you notice it's still a little bit chunky, you can hit it with the immersion blender again. Now you've got enough sauce for about 4 pizzas.
Okay, our pizza dough has been rising for about 30 minutes. It's at this time I'm going to put the broiler on high, and I'm going to put the burner on medium heat. You're going to start cooking the pizza as you're adding the toppings. You're going to want to leave it on there for about 7 minutes. You just have to work with your stove to figure out what the perfect amount of time is. So while that's cooking, I'm going ahead and add my sauce. You want to get the sauce edge to edge, the cheese edge to edge. I'm putting a little Parmesan on here. At the edge of that pizza, it's going to sit there and crisp up, and it's going to be a delicious crust. Go ahead and add your toppings. And now it's really important that your mozzarella is still in the refrigerator. You want to keep your mozzarella cold to the very last minute. I wait till about 2 minutes before I'm going to put it into the broiler. If you don't do that, if you don't keep your mozzarella cold, the grease will separate in the heat, and you'll get an oily topping on your pizza. It'll be a greasy pizza. So just remember to keep your mozzarella in the refrigerator, put it on last minute. You stick it in the oven on that high broil. So to judge when your pizza is ready to go is just by eye. There's no time. I just sit there and watch the pizza. So you want to take a butter knife and cut around the edges to make sure it doesn't stick, and then it should slide right on out. Enjoy.
Now we're going to go ahead and make another pizza, except this time we're going to make it on the pizza stone. You want to make sure that your surface is well floured so that your dough doesn't stick while you're rolling it out. You're going to need about half of the amount of dough that you made before, so this will make a good second pizza for the night. Now you just want to start working your pizza dough a little bit, maybe knead it a couple times to incorporate some more of that flour. You can never have enough because you don't want your dough sticking to your surface or to your peel when you go to put it in the oven. Go ahead and start working your pizza dough out so it's thin. You want it really thin in this case because it's going to cook quick because of the stone, and you don't want any raw spots. If you get a little hole, you can patch it up just like you see me doing here. Just a little twist and a pinch and you're good to go. Now you're going to get your peel or a flat box, whatever you have laying around that's stiff enough to hold the pizza, and you want to flour it up good. Go ahead and put some flour on there and stir it around, and then you're going to get a little insurance with this cornmeal here, and this is going to make sure your pizza comes off nice and smooth into the oven. Go ahead and give your sauce a stir in case everything starts to settle and separate. Now you put a spoonful onto your dough, work it around all the way to the edges, and now you're going to come over and start it off with a little Parmesan cheese on the bottom. And now you're going to come back in with some of that cold mozzarella cheese Jason was talking about. When you're ready to go to the oven, you want to make sure it's not going to stick, so you're going to want to give it a little bit of shake. That way you know it's going to come off smooth. The oven should be preheated as high as it will go with the stone in there for about an hour, and that'll get it hot enough to cook your pie as much as you need. After a few minutes, judging by eye, you're just going to pull your pizza out, and there you have it. Pizza Stone pizza, ready to go. Family's happy.